The Dark Star. The Dark Star 2. He decided to make chili for dinner, but part of him wanted to do nothing more than rush straight to the record player and start listening to the Dorothy Donegan album he'd bought. He felt almost like a kid again. When he was maybe 8 or 9 years old, he'd had the Nintendo gaming system, like almost every kid of that generation did, and one of the most precious memories of his father were when he would drive him to the KB toy store in the Allendale shopping plaza and let him pick out whatever game he wanted. He'd walk along the shelf pulling games out one by one to see the pictures of the graphics and try to read the game's description on the back. At 9 he could read better than most he'd found, but there were still so many words he hadn't learned yet. All the games always looked so amazing, but as he slowly discovered, the games weren't always as fun or interesting, or very playable, as they seemed, so he had learned over time to pick carefully. Once he was back in the car on the ride home, he'd read the instructions and story booklet that came along with the new game cartridge, hoping to get some idea of the game, but really that was just a form of self-distraction, because as soon as his father's car pulled into the driveway, he'd run full speed into the house, up the stairs to jump in front of the little color TV he had in his room, shove the cartridge into his console and see what his new game was all about. As an adult, he couldn't remember such a feeling of anticipation, that excitement he'd felt back then. It was all-encompassing, overwhelming. As he stepped into the kitchen of his small house, he felt a small twinge of that old excitement, and it took all of his adult maturity to focus on the cans of beans, diced tomatoes, and meat that would become his dinner. "I must be getting old if I'm getting this excited about a damn record," he said out loud, startling his cat Luna, a crayon white Persian who angrily stared at him from her cushion on the chair near the heater. "Don't worry, Luna," he said, laughing. "I may be getting old, but I'm not quite crazy yet," and put the glass lid on the pot to let it simmer for a while. Besides, he thought it wouldn't hurt to give the record a little listen while he prepared the chili. He slid the record out of the cardboard sheath, the record itself protected by a second wax paper sheath, which he slid off and placed the large black circle on the spindle. Just as he was getting ready to push the little silver button on the side to start playing, his phone blared from his pocket and he pulled it out and looked at the caller ID, the record forgotten for the time being, and saw it was his old friend David. He smiled inside and hit the answer icon and brought the phone up to his ear. Glancing at the clock, it was 6:53. "And what do I owe the pleasure of receiving a call from the hottest stand-up comedian in New York this evening?" he asked, turning back to the kitchen to check on dinner. "Hey Mikey," his made-for-radio voice echoed into his ear from the speaker. He knew Michael hated being called Mikey, which was exactly why he did it. "I actually just walked in the door of my apartment, and I was thinking about all of us back in the day, so I called to say hi. How's my sleepy old hometown?" He'd seen David just 2 nights earlier in his new Netflix special doing 90 minutes of stand-up material that was poignant, nostalgic, and funny as fuck. Hard to believe that he was the same guy who'd driven his middle school teachers crazy with his antics and sharp tongue. He had a wit that could cut deep when he really went for it. It was an acquired taste in person, but on the stage he shined. "Oh, you know, bears digging in the trash, people complaining about the weather, the usual New England stuff. Nothing as exciting as the Upper East Side of Manhattan, I'm sure. Do you ever call Ben like this? Or do you save these calls for folks back home?" Ben, another one of the old neighborhood crew, had moved out to the West Coast shortly after college with dreams of making it big as a filmmaker, but the last he'd heard he did mostly commercials and TV spots. It was a tough world to break into, as many who took the plunge soon discovered. He'd only spoken to him once or twice in the previous 10 years or so. "Actually, that's part of the reason I called. I got a strange email from him yesterday and I tried to call his cell, but he never answers, and his voicemail is full. Have you heard anything from him?" David's deep voice asked inquisitively. "Geez," Michael said, standing in his socks in the kitchen, the smell of his cooking dinner making his stomach rumble. "I think it was maybe 4 years ago when he was in town to see his mom, and we chatted for like 5 minutes at the Big Y. He seemed fine, maybe a little jet-lagged. I usually see his brother Sam down at Daddy's. Want me to ask him next time I see him? You know, it could have just been some junk mail program or whatever. How weird was the email? It was cryptic as hell and there was an attachment, but I didn't open it in case it was just a computer virus or something. Cryptic, huh? Michael had always loved a good puzzle. What exactly did it say? There was a loud crash in the background and the sound of a cat hissing and meowing from the phone speaker. Oh fuck, David said. Mr. Whiskers just knocked a glass off the table. Look, I'll send you the email I got. Yeah, Michael said laughing. Being a cat owner had its moments. Just send it to my Gmail. Later, bro, and as he hung up, he heard David fumble with the phone and cursing at his cat. He put the phone back in his back pocket and grabbed a plate off the shelf and started fixing his dinner while his cat Luna sat on the table feigning disinterest. The chili was delicious, if a little spicy, and he was halfway through the bowl and dipping a piece of buttered bread into the sauce when he saw a notification on his phone. It was an email from David. From David, here's the email Ben sent me. Let me know what you think. He clicked on the message and a small wall of text opened up. David. I know you know, and now I know too. Can it really be true? For certain minutes at the least. That crafty demon and that loud beast. That plagued me day and night. Ran out of my sight. Though I had long burned in the gyre. Between my hatred and desire, I saw freedom won. And all laugh in the sun. Tick-tock, click-clack. You better watch your back. Benjamin. He read it a second time, and then a third. It didn't make any sense at all. Was it some kind of poem? A threat? And why call himself Benjamin when we called him Ben, sometimes Benny if we were up to no good as kids? The only person he could remember ever calling him Benjamin was his father. None of it made any sense. He clicked on the attachment and a photo appeared on the screen. It looked like an album cover, but it was from an artist he'd never heard of called Darude Sandstorm, and the artwork was what looked to be a fuzzy sand dune under a clear blue sky. He stared at the picture for a few moments before opening up Google to find the song. The top result was a video, so he clicked the play button and a heavy techno beat started blasting from the speakers of his computer. He shook his head and paused the song. Ben hated techno. He slid his phone across the table and finished his dinner, trying to make sense out of what appeared to be nonsense. He decided then and there to go see Ben's mother and ask her if she'd heard anything from him.